Welcome back. All right, it is time for another Panic Index. Now, I've seen some suggestions on, making this a more formal process and doing an actual ranking. The Panic Index is never meant to be something formal and, all thought out. I honestly just have logos on a board and I don't plan out ahead of time where I'm going to put teams. And that has been for years now the way that I've done the Panic Index. I like doing it that way. I think it leads to some interesting discussions from people. And hey, it's a fun thing to do. That being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So, at the top of the board, we have the Woohoo Magnet, which was made today. Homer Simpson quite happy here. The I Can Do It. Now, this one here is for teams that are doing pretty well and weren't expected to. This is where I want them to be this week. This is for kind of not great, not bad. So kind of the in-between. People might be mildly concerned. This is for Panik. And this little Aladdin's lamp at the bottom is more for the... So we're going to be in the draft lottery, and we'd like to see how the draft lottery turns out. And so I'll assign them to one of these 5 categories. Agreed? Okay, cool. And the whole idea of ranking them all and everything, I don't have interest in making this. I already have stress over the Panic or over the power rankings every week. Every second week when I do a Panic Index, I don't need that extra stress. So we'll start with the LA Kings. And honestly, right now with the way they're playing, I'm gonna put them right up there. Yeah. They've had a good road trip. They're coming home. They're gonna play against Vancouver tomorrow. Should be a fun one. The LA Kings weren't expected to be this good this season, and so they're overachieving at this point. And so I put them in the woohoo category. Toronto right now, I mean, it depends on the day with Toronto. I think I said this last time too. I don't want to put them here. They just beat Boston, and they've looked pretty good. So it's tough. Do I put them next to the woohoo magnet or the I Can Do It? Because they don't belong here in my eyes. So I'm going to put them up here. Yeah, I'm going to put Toronto up in the happy category right now. They just beat Boston and they did it handedly. So why don't we rate Boston next? I do think that Boston goes in the Panic. Now personally, I put them more in this category. I do think that Boston, they're desperately in need of some new top young players, like really great. And I'm not saying that as an insult to the players they have now, but they don't have like a Bedard. They don't have a Lafreniere. They don't have somebody of that stature and could use that. So I would personally like to see them here. We're not there yet. There's Panic there because they're not scoring. Pasternak only has 1 goal, 5 on 5. Swayman's numbers haven't been fantastic, though, as I keep saying, he's not the problem, but I understand that when you've got that big paycheck coming in, people will point and go, well, that guy's your problem right there because he's getting that big paycheck. Buffalo. I'm going to put Buffalo right here. I'm going to put Buffalo in the concerned category. They don't have a record where I can justify having them any higher, and I'm not going to put them as Panic because I don't feel like it's Panic right now for Buffalo. That win over Ottawa last night, that was impressive. That was an impressive win for the Buffalo Sabres, and now it's a matter of following it up. The problem they've had this season is the consistency from one game to the next, so maybe they're finding that. Anaheim to me is already in the category of a team that's they're still probably going to be a lottery team. I do think they're going to be better than last year. I think that their record's going to end up being a bit stronger than last year. They may end up finishing around 500 if they can start finding the scoring from the young players to equal the goaltending Dostal's provided them thus far this season. So Anaheim, I'm putting in that category there. Calgary, I'm going to put them right here. To me, it's a perfect example of here's a team that was expected to not be very good this year. I believe they are 4-5-1 in their last 10, but overall they're 7-5-1. So that's still a good record. And they got the win somehow last night over Montreal. So there you go. The Calgary Flames, I do think still belong in a category that's relatively happy at this point in time. Montreal. So Montreal's an interesting case too, because there's definitely some fans that want to see progression that's not there. And there's definitely those in management And there's definitely a coach that's not happy about the way things have been going this year, that coach being Marty St. Louis. I'm going to go ahead and put him here. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and put him next to the Panik because even though we kind of expected them to probably miss the playoffs this year and be a lottery team, some of the stuff that's gone on, I do feel like there's some panic in Montreal. Absolutely. Yep. And whether that's just media driven, I don't think the fans have a lot of panic, but there might be some if you feel like, hey, is this team really going to turn the corner? You know, you reach that point where you're like, is this team really going to turn the corner now, or what's going to happen? Colorado, there's definitely panic because of injuries. It's going to get better. We know it's going to get better. But Makar's status, he's traveling with the team, so he might be okay, but we haven't heard 100% at the time I'm recording this. So definitely some reason for panic with Colorado. And then the goaltending. Annanen's been the best of the three, but is he a starting goaltender in the NHL? Is he going to be able to play 50 or more games? And is Georgiev going to get his game back? Is Kakkonen going to be the answer as a backup to Annunen? What do you do with Georgiev if that's the case? So, yeah, there's definitely some reason for panic, I think, with Colorado. Chicago, in recent times, like I'm going to put them down here, but I'm going to say straight out, if they keep playing the way they have been recently, they could end up in this area the next time I do a panic index. Although, keeping in mind, I do very frequently change how the panic index works. It's one of the things I love to do is put this together and say, I'm going to do it a little different this time, which if I went to a more formal process wouldn't work. You kind of have to have a standard, and I again don't think that necessarily is needed. But yeah, Chicago, I'm putting them in the category of, being in that rebuild, but a couple more wins and they might be in this category of the I can do it. Carolina, things are going really well with Carolina, even when they don't play very well. And at points last night against Philadelphia, they had little struggles, and they win. So when a team isn't necessarily playing their absolute A game, you're going to fall off. You know that, right? Just settle down. Just settle down and just relax. But, yeah, even when Carolina's not bringing their A game, they're winning. And that is a huge part of having a great season. So, yeah, Carolina's up there. And while I'm at it, there's no reason not to have Winnipeg there. Winnipeg's 12-1. Absolutely amazing start to the season for them. Are we in the start? Like, I feel like we're about a month in, so does it still qualify as the start? We're almost to the point where I have to make my, video on here's where the standings are a month into the season. We're almost there. And so Winnipeg only having one regulation loss, one loss altogether is kind of a feat in and of itself. And if they played 500 hockey from here, they'd have 93 points. So 93 points probably gets you in the playoffs in the West. They don't even have to play that well from here. And that's where it's great if you have that kind of a fantastic start. You don't have to be fantastic the rest of the way. You just have to be good to make the playoffs. Although keeping in mind that very often teams that win the playoffs are the ones that are hot going into said playoffs. Tampa Bay, I'm going to put them here for now. They are now 7-6. I believe they've lost 3 in a row. Is it 3 in a row or 4? And so for Tampa Bay, yeah, I'm not going to put them in panic at this point because they're still in a position where they should make the playoffs. Absolutely. The Atlantic in general has been kind of mediocre. So even though they're only one game above 500, they're still on track to maybe end up being as high as third in the division. I do think teams beneath them, one of them's going to go on some kind of a run here. So maybe Tampa Bay goes on a run themselves to stay ahead. But yeah, there's got to be at least a little bit of concern there with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vegas, no reason for panic with Vegas. I could stand here and say, well, they don't play a full 60 minutes. They never have. I could stand here and say they rely on comebacks, but that's always been kind of a thing. If they're down by a goal going into the third period and they're at home, they're going to win. If they're down by 2 going to the third, I'm pretty sure they're going to win. The Vegas Golden Knights are, and have been throughout their existence, a team that just defies every expectation placed upon them pretty much every year. So that is impressive. That is absolutely impressive. Vegas at the top of the board. Washington has to be at the top of the board. Where else could I put Washington, right? Though they did lose their last game against Carolina, that's Carolina, and Carolina's a pretty darn good team. So Washington belongs at the top of the board as well. No reason not to have them feeling quite happy with how things are going. Utah, there has to be concern when it comes to Utah. So Utah I'm going to put next to panic because they're losing. They're not scoring goals anymore. The goaltending numbers have slipped. They did add Olimata, but there are definitely concerns about their defensive depth. What started out as a great story with Utah has kind of been a nightmare, but is there a lot of time for them to turn it around? Absolutely. And hopefully they turn it around and I get a couple of Utah jerseys and I can wear some Utah garb to talk about their good fortunes or misfortunes soon. But either way, Utah, I'm going to put next to Panik because this is not going great. Even though it's their first year, and I understand it's their first year, and fans are quite excited to have a new team, but this was supposed to be a little better of an experience so far than what it has been. Vancouver, they kind of have to go there right now. They've had a good road trip so far. They're not winning on home ice. Okay. All right. They're not winning on home ice. There's still some concerns about the forward group, the defense, Demko's status too. They have beaten Anaheim and San Jose. Those are games they should win. Now they're going into a game against the Kings. If this had been recorded after the game against the Kings and they beat the Kings, then maybe I might put them up there. But yeah, saying it out loud, I'm like, nah, there's still some concerns around Vancouver, and I think they're valid. Even though the team has a very good record, I think there's some valid concerns when it comes to the team. Columbus has got to go there too. Columbus had a strong start to the season and looked quite good. They got shellacked in back-to-back games, and then last night they couldn't close it out against San Jose. So definitely some reason for concern. I don't put it in flat-out panic yet for Columbus, but concern makes a lot of sense. Minnesota has to go there. They lost last night against LA at home 5-1. Not a great result, but that's only the second regulation loss they've taken. You know what else? They belong here because people didn't think they were going to do it. In fact, while I'm at it, because this is supposed to be for the teams that are off to a pretty good run so far, have a good record that weren't expected to, I would say all three of these should be there. Does Winnipeg belong there too then? See, this is where it gets tricky because the way that I've got this, so why don't we do it this way then? Where the I can do it goes over here, and I know this is going to throw people off who like to have, straight up and down. But these are for the teams where the fan base would be happy where it wasn't expected. So, man, that really, you know what? LA kind of belongs there too then, right? Carolina was expected to be good. I'm going to go ahead and say Toronto was mostly expected to be good. Vegas as well. I don't think anybody expected this of Winnipeg. So let's go ahead and put Winnipeg here. And then at the end of this, I'll move these around a little bit more so that this isn't just off on an island by itself. For people who fast forward to the end, of course, you miss all this. You miss all the moving stuff around. The exciting stuff. Nashville's in panic. So does that require any further discussion? It's obvious, right? The team's frustrated, coaching's frustrated, management, the fans. It's not a great time right now for Nashville. Even though they did get a big win over Colorado, they then followed that up with a tough loss. So we'll see what happens with Nashville going forward, but definitely some concern to the point of panic. Definitely, I would say concern with the Oilers. I'm not going to put it in panic at this point because it's not as bad a start as what they had last year, and it does feel like they're pulling things together. McDavid returns to the lineup tonight. Things should be pretty darn good for Edmonton. So I don't see any reason to have Edmonton in the happiest category either up there, but I don't see any reason to have them in panic either. Let's see. Is there anybody that I could put with the woohoo cat? Yeah, Florida. Florida, absolutely. They belong there. Florida had a bit of a rocky first couple of weeks, and then they've just been a machine ever since. And it's notable, too, that Reinhart, that first few games, not a lot from him, and then he turns it on, and all of a sudden they're winning. It's not a coincidence. Reinhart's been fantastic. Florida's getting really good numbers everywhere. Bobrovsky's numbers haven't been fantastic, but he hasn't needed to be. And that's the beauty of it is he hasn't needed to be great, and we know he can and will be. So Florida's getting a lot of points right now, and they're going to be really tough to defeat during the season. But if they end up finishing first overall, let's just say they win the President's Trophy, so then they don't win the Cup, right? So that's the tricky part right there. New Jersey. So the expectations were high with New Jersey. I'm kind of torn because I kind of feel like they belong here, honestly. But I have to make up my mind whether I want to say there are concerns or it's a woohoo. Oh man, they've won 2 out of 3 on the road that have been very impressive victories, both via shutout. So I'm tempted to put them. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. So yeah, that works. I think that's fine. St. Louis, I'm going to put St. Louis still in the concern category. Obviously, they get the big win last night over Tampa, which helps. But they need to be able to string wins together. So until we see St. Louis string some wins together and get into that position where they have a really good record, I think that's a good spot for them. Islanders, are the Islanders in panic or are they lottery? I'm gonna go with panic because of the lack of scoring. So Boston, like in terms of they're not getting the goals when they need them. They did get a win last night, so that's a key thing for them. But honestly, for the New York Islanders, it does feel like this season is in danger of getting away from them. And if it does Lou Lamoriello step down? Do they make him step down? Do we see a change behind the bench? I mean, it seems weird because they just hired Waugh, but it's Lou Lamoriello. He can have a quick trigger when it comes to switching coaches behind the bench. Ottawa, concern, definitely concern. Their issues really are on the road, and they're not getting points where they should. And then last night, they didn't really deserve points against Buffalo. So things aren't getting better for the Ottawa Senators. I really want this team to finally get it back into the playoffs for the first time in forever. But I don't know if they're going to get there. And we're hearing all the same things of, oh, this team's better and they don't accept losing and it's a better vibe around the team than what we saw before. But it can change very, very quickly. And for the Sens, last night is either going to be a tipping point or it's a wake-up call where they realize they have some things to work on. So we'll see which way that ends up falling. The Rangers were expected to be good. They've been good. They haven't won every single game. They are relying on Igor a lot, but they're still a really good team. And I do expect the New York Rangers to be, if not the best team in their division, probably top 2. And I say that even though Carolina and Washington are both in that division, then they're both looking really good too. I expect the Rangers to end up in that top 2. So yeah, I don't see any reason not to have them in the woohoo category. Seattle. Is it panic for Seattle? I'm going to say yes. There's a lot of teams with panic right now. I did the video the other day on teams with mediocre records, and there's definitely some fan bases that are getting tired of those mediocre records. And so I'll put Seattle next to that. I think Seattle's better than their record recently. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's fallen apart. I think they need to, come home, reset, and start over. Not a great record for them right now, and definitely some reason for panic in my eyes. Dallas. So I've run out of room in the woohoo category, so I'm going to put Dallas here, technically still in that same line. So the line counts on the second part here, because again, I didn't want to just take teams here, move them down to this line, because again, people are going to go, oh, you don't think our team's doing as well, or we're not as happy. So everybody goes up here, just the teams that we expected to be good and the teams that maybe weren't expected to be good that have had pretty good runs so far. So for Dallas, top of the board, even though they lost both games in Finland against the Panthers, I still don't see any reason for panic around Dallas. San Jose, they've won 4 out of 5. They're not in panic. I'm going to put them here. But if they keep winning the way they've been winning, they're going to get into that category pretty quick. This is a team that I think is enjoying playing. They have absolutely no pressure, and they're kind of fun to watch. San Jose this year is so much more fun to watch than they have been in about 4 or 5 years. And it hasn't translated into a lot of wins at this point, but it's starting to. And they're starting to play with confidence. They're starting to puck pressure a little bit more. You can see each game, San Jose gets a little bit more confidence in themselves. And then last night, Vanacek saves 50 shots against Columbus. So I checked. That's a pretty good number. Detroit, I'm not going to put Detroit in panic at this point. I'm going to put them as concerned. At this point in time, and their game is tonight in Chicago. They're 5-5-1. They lose that game against Chicago, I could absolutely justify them being in panic. So there's the possibility that if I did this video tomorrow, I'd have Detroit in panic. I can't have them there right now. They're 5-5-1, and there's an opening there. There's definitely an opening in the Atlantic if somebody decides to charge up and grab it between Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit. There's weak records. Boston's got a weak record. Tampa Bay doesn't have a great record either. There's an opening there for somebody to grab. Could it be Detroit? And there you go. Pittsburgh. I'm going to put Pittsburgh next to Panik, even though I kind of want to put them down here, because there's a lot of older players that are paid very, very well. And while they're playing well for the most part, I don't think anybody's going to blame Malkin or Crosby for their record. I don't think Letang would get blame either. There may be some that might blame Erik Karlsson on some level, and the cap hit for Karlsson's definitely a lot. And there's those two that might blame management in Pittsburgh for what's going on and gone wrong. But it's just that whole aging process is tough. And then they haven't had that influx of youth either. I mentioned with Boston earlier. I guess it's teams that wear black and gold. They need good young players to come in, preferably franchise level or generational. Sure, I'll take a generational forward and go from there. But yeah, Pittsburgh, they need that influx. I think that's part of the reason they traded for McGroarty. Philadelphia is rebuilding. John Tortorella clearly last night not enjoying how that game finished, not enjoying answering reporter questions after that game finished either. And I respect the man for that. I respect him a lot. I have been a big fan of John Tortorella's for the last, I'll say 5 years. I was not a huge fan of John Tortorella during his time in Vancouver, definitely only because it didn't work. That was the wrong lineup for him. And there have been points in time in his career where I wasn't a huge booster of his. But right now, he's a good teacher. He's blunt. He's honest. He doesn't sugarcoat things to the media or to the players. And I respect that. Every now and then he'll healthy scratch somebody and then give them a vague answer about how they get back in the lineup. But nobody's perfect. But at any rate, there you go. There's your 32 teams on the board. We've got 7 teams that I'm saying are doing really well that we kind of expected to do well. And I'm giving Toronto that benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. I think Toronto's playing pretty well. You're going to have shaky starts here and there, sure, but they're playing pretty well. And Stolarz has been good. 5 teams in this category of doing better than expected and probably believing they can keep that up. Uncertain, 8 that are kind of right in the middle. 7. That's 8 panicked. I don't know if I've ever had 8 next to the panic magnet. And then 4 that I consider to just be in a rebuild and not overly concerned with wins and losses. Again, Montreal would be in that category, if not for the fact that some of the storylines this year have been troubling for the Montreal Canadiens. So I threw them next to panic. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.